Welcome back to our channel, my wonderful friends. I have to tell you, my mind has been racing non-stop ever since the latest hints and leaks about our favorite show started dropping. We all know that in the world of soap operas, death is rarely the final chapter. But what is happening right now is on a completely different level of crazy. We have been told that Ross Cullum is dead. We watched Peter August meet his end. And we all breathed a sigh of relief when the terrifying Cesar Faison was finally put in the ground. But somehow, in a way that sends absolute shivers down my spine, the dark and twisted legacy of Cesar Faison is still very much alive. It feels like a heavy, suffocating cloud is hanging over Port Charles, and I cannot help but feel a deep sense of dread knowing that this nightmare is far from over. The past is refusing to stay buried, and it is reaching out to grab our favorite characters. My heart absolutely aches for Anna Devane right now. Anna has always been one of my absolute favorite people in this town. She is so strong, so fiercely independent, and she has survived things that would break any normal person. But right now, she is being pushed to the absolute brink. Anna is starting to connect the dots, and she is firmly convinced that the only people who could possibly be tied to Faison's lingering leftover scams are his own children. What truly breaks my heart is watching her struggle with her own mind. Faison's final, cruelest trick was designed to make Anna question her very reality. It is so hard to watch her suffer like this. The hospital has officially declared her mentally stable, but she is still seeing ghosts. She is still being haunted by visions that no one else can see. When I think about Anna's long history with Faison, my mind goes back to all those years she spent as a top-tier agent. She has faced international terrorists and the most cunning criminal masterminds the world has ever seen. But Cesar Faison was always her ultimate white whale, her most personal demon. Do you remember when he actually wore a mask to impersonate the love of her life, Duke Lavery? That was a violation of the highest order. He did not just want to defeat Anna, he wanted to possess her, to own her heart and her mind. That is why seeing her crumble now is so deeply unsettling. She survived the mass deception, she survived being held hostage, but this new psychological warfare feels different. It feels more insidious because the enemy is hiding in the shadows of her own mind, making her doubt every step she takes. When I sit back and think about Cesar Faison, I am reminded of just how brilliant and utterly terrifying he always was. He was never just a physical threat. He was an absolute master of mind games. He loved to play with his victims, using illusions, tricks, and elaborate setups to make them doubt their own sanity. He wanted to break people from the inside out, and he was horrifyingly good at it. It makes perfect sense that his final protocol would be something so deeply psychological. But what really gets my wheels turning is remembering who else loved to manipulate people's minds just as much as Faison did. That is right, Peter August, also known as Heinrich Faison. Peter was cut from the exact same dark cloth as his father, even if he spent years trying to pretend otherwise. Peter thrived on gaslighting people, on twisting the truth, and on making his victims feel like they were the ones going crazy. When I think about Anna seeing ghosts and doubting her own sanity, I cannot help but see Peter's fingerprints all over it. The apple truly did not fall far from the tree. But this brings me to a massive burning question that I just cannot stop thinking about. Who exactly is Ross Cullum in relation to Cesar Faison? Why would a seemingly ordinary man care so deeply about carrying out Faison's final twisted project? The more I think about Cullum, the more the hairs on my arms stand up. This man has somehow managed to drag Faison's children into this mess, forcing them to participate in whatever dark protocol Faison left behind, and it is just chilling. It makes me so incredibly sad and frustrated to think about Dr. Britt Westbourne and her brother Cassius Faison being pulled into this nightmare. Britt and Cassius tried so hard to step out of their father's dark shadow. They wanted to be good people, to live normal lives, and to escape the toxic legacy of the Faison name. To see that Cullum has somehow coerced them into playing a crucial role in bringing this protocol to life is just tragic. It feels like no matter how hard they tried, they could never truly escape the web their father spun. Britt worked so incredibly hard to shed the toxic skin of her family's legacy. She became a respected doctor, a woman who learned how to love and be loved, despite the enormous emotional walls she built around herself. And sweet, honorable Cassius, he was the absolute antithesis of everything Cesar Faison stood for. He was a good man, a loving husband, and a person of true integrity. To think that Cullum has somehow reached beyond the grave to drag these two into Faison's cold fusion protocol feels like a massive violation of their memories. It makes me so angry on their behalf. They deserve to rest in peace, free from the manipulative grasp of their father. But Faison never cared about what his children deserved. Let us talk a little more about this cold fusion project. In the real world, cold fusion is a theoretical concept that could change the entire planet. But in this universe, a scientific breakthrough like this in the hands of a madman is a recipe for global catastrophe. We are talking about a world that has given us weather machines capable of freezing the globe and memory mapping technology. So, the idea of a cold fusion protocol being the centerpiece of Faison's final evil master plan fits perfectly into the rich history we have watched for years. The fact that Ross Cullum is so desperate to see this through tells me that the stakes are higher than we can possibly imagine. I have been racking my brain over this, and I honestly think Anna is entirely right to be suspicious. There has to be a missing link, a bridge connecting Ross Cullum to Cesar Faison. And the most logical, terrifying answer is that Peter August is that bridge. After all, Peter is Faison's son, and only someone with a deep personal connection to Faison would have the motivation to continue his evil, mad science experiments. But how could Peter be involved if he is dead? Well, I want you to hold on to your seats, because this is where my thoughts get really wild. But we all know that anything is possible here. What if Peter's brain did not die when his body did? What if Peter's brain was somehow preserved in a jar using some crazy advanced technology and was secretly transplanted into the mind and body of Ross Cullum? I know it sounds like something straight out of a science fiction movie, but think about it. It would explain absolutely everything. A normal person would never understand the complex, twisted plans of Cesar Faison, but Peter's brain inside Cullum's head, that would make perfect sense. Peter would know exactly how to execute the cold fusion project and how to manipulate everyone involved. A strange, twisted way, Peter's brain in Cullum's head would be completely coherent for someone like Peter. This wild theory also perfectly answers the lingering, creepy mystery of why Ross Cullum looks so remarkably like Cesar Faison did at that age. If we dive into the theory of relatives, could Cullum actually be a secret, long-lost brother of Faison? A twin, perhaps? Or even a clone? If Cullum is a genetic match or a close relative to Faison, he would be the absolute perfect physical vessel for Peter's brain. Just imagine the sheer horror of this scenario. Peter, a man who desperately wanted to step out of his father's shadow, is now literally living inside a body that looks exactly like the father he hated. It is a twisted, poetic nightmare that only this kind of storytelling could deliver, and I am honestly so captivated by the sheer audacity of it. We have to remember the deep, painful history that drove Peter to become the monster he was. For the longest time, Peter just wanted to be loved and accepted, but he felt entirely rejected by his father. He felt like he was tossed aside, replaced by the children Caesar had with Liesel, Obrecht, Britt, and Cassius. Peter carried that heavy burden of rejection his entire life. Do you remember when he wrote his book, The Severed Branch? That title says everything you need to know about his state of mind. He viewed himself as the branch that was violently cut off from the family tree, left to wither and die while Britt and Cassius were given the chance to bloom. That kind of deep-seated jealousy and pain does not just disappear, it festers into pure rage. And we cannot forget the role Valentine Cassadine played in all of this. Valentine was the one who originally took the young boy and handed him over to Cesar, setting Peter on this dark path. But in a strange, complicated way, Valentine ended up being more of a father to Peter than Cesar ever was. Valentine carried so much guilt for what he did, and he tried to be a guiding light for Peter later in life. But the damage was already done. The trauma of feeling abandoned by his real father, combined with the twisted upbringing he endured, shaped Peter into a man who was capable of doing the unthinkable. He was the one who ultimately killed his own father, Cesar Faison, in a desperate bid to finally take control of his own destiny. So, if Peter's brain is truly alive inside Cullum's body, his motivations become crystal clear. He does not just want to finish his father's work out of loyalty. He wants to steal all of his father's glory. He wants to prove that he, the severed branch, was always the smartest, the most capable, and the most dangerous of them all. He wants to succeed where Caesar failed. And doing it while wearing a face that looks exactly like Caesar's, it is the ultimate act of revenge and dominance. He gets to be the father who rejected him, but better, stronger, and more lethal. The psychology behind this is so dark and fascinating, I honestly cannot get enough of it. It adds such a beautiful, tragic layer to an already complex and emotionally draining story. But what does all of this mean for our beloved Anna Devane? If this theory is true, and Peter is operating through Cullum, then Anna is in for the fight of her life. Peter has always had a sick obsession with Anna, blaming her for so much of his pain while simultaneously craving her maternal love. If he is the one pulling the strings, orchestrating these ghosts and illusions to make her think she is going crazy, then this is not just a random attack. This is a deeply personal, highly targeted campaign to destroy Anna's mind. It terrifies me to think about what he might do next. Anna is already so fragile, so exhausted from constantly fighting these invisible demons, and I just pray she can find the strength to survive this. As I sit here and process all of this, I am just blown away by how beautifully this storyline ties together decades of history. The writers are pulling from the deepest, darkest corners of the lore, and they are weaving a story that is both terrifying and incredibly emotional. I feel so invested in Anna's survival, and I am so anxious to see how Britt and Cassius's involvement will finally be explained to all of us. I know we are in for some incredibly dark and bumpy roads ahead, but we also know that Anna Devane is a fighter. She is a survivor. And no matter how many ghosts they send her way, I have to believe that she will eventually uncover the truth. I will be right here watching every second of it with you.